Vaughn Swain is an entrepreneur of 4 businesses here in Charleston, including her own CBD business. I talk one-on-one with Vaughn for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Vaughn Swain, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Yes, this is my second time. I'm so excited.
Yes, ma'am. Obviously, you are the co-owner of Mr. B CBD. Obviously, you're owner of Podcast Her. You're obviously do a lot of digital marketing. And of course, you are a gamer. Who else is Vaughn these days?
Oh, man. You know what? That's a constant evolution. So I'm always committed to learning a little bit more about myself and allowing myself to not be put into a box. So I enjoy what I feel like on the inside I'm going to enjoy, and I go for it. I do the things that I want to do, not what people expect me to do.
What are the things that you're doing now, and what are the things that people are expecting you to do?
I think that sometimes when you do something new that people may not have known, like for instance, I'm in the cannabis industry now, and that's a new endeavor that people may not have thought, or I have a lot of people who hit me up behind the scenes and say, wait a minute, is it, what is it that you're posting about? And so I talk about hemp, I talk about cannabis, so that's just one element of what I mean when I say I do things that I have a passion in, that I have an interest in, and that goes from gaming to something like the cannabis industry. I just go where my heart goes, and I tune everybody else out, and I just focus in.
Where is your heart right now, Vaughn?
Ooh, it's in a lot of places. I could say not so much in a lot of places, but my heart is wherever I'm putting my foot forward in, like wherever I'm moving forward in, that's where my heart is the most. So I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my community and how all those 3 things interact with each other. That is where my heart is right now.
And how do you interact with all of those people and all of those things?
Oh, I take it one day at a time. I treat people with respect. I treat my goals and my aspirations with respect, and I feel like those things give me respect back.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's just essentially how I move forward and how I interact. Yeah.
And recently you said this on social media. You said this quote: "Entrepreneur work is such a whirlwind. I hold ownership in all 4 of these businesses, and I can safely tell you that they did not piece it together overnight." Right. How did you piece it together over time?
Oh man, by really looking at my experiences and looking at the bigger picture. There are a lot of times over the course of those many years where I sat down and said, what is all this about? What is all this for? Like, I used to work at the Fudgery. I think you remember that. And I can sit there and say, well, why am I here? Like, what is it that I really want to do? Do I want to flip fudge all my life? Or like, what's happening? And sometimes some of the things that you're learning in those moments, you carry with you later on, but you don't know that yet because you're not in the later on, you're in the right now. So I think that it doesn't happen overnight because it's important for you to appreciate your right now so that when you do have that bird's eye view and have the vision, you realize everything truly does happen for a reason. And those skill sets I'm using now, that I can think of everything I've ever been involved in. And that shines through in my businesses, and it shines through behind the scenes and on the scenes.
And what is the big picture right now?
The big picture right now is to continue pushing forward on all the different things that I have my hand where they can be successful, and just truly just carrying out the blueprint that I have. That's what the big picture is for me, without me giving away too much of what it is.
Right. And of those 4 businesses that you own right now, which one describes you?
I think all of them really do. So it's hard to say. Each one of them has a element of me. The gamer in me, I love to play games. I've played games forever. My earliest memory was with a video game. So I've always been a part of that kind of community, and have always wanted to do streaming, and that falls in line with my love for digital marketing and digital things and technology. I've always been a part of that. When it comes to the cannabis industry, a lot of it has to do with really, really race relations and justice more than anything. Really, the cannabis industry does. When it comes to understanding what the quote unquote war on drugs is, how it's affecting people, how it is disproportionately affecting certain groups. All of that is something that I'm passionate about. It definitely gets my gears grinding when I see certain things going on. So that's a part of me as well, just wanting to make a positive difference. And of course, podcaster, I've got a broadcasting background in a lot of areas. So it's all of it signifies a piece of me.
When you go back to cannabis, and you just mentioned the racial movement and obviously, racial bias and whatnot.
Yeah.
What's that particular group that are being targeted right now in your mind?
Yeah. In my mind, and I think we can look to the ACLU recent study about how Black people are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis than white people. And that's for marijuana possession in South Carolina. That fact alone is enough for me to say, okay, well, there are groups that are being targeted due to racial bias, due to stereotypes. Statistically, Black people and white people utilize marijuana at a similar rate, but Black people are arrested more. That don't make sense. At the end of the day, that's something that doesn't add up to me. And that's me saying it in the most simplest terms that I can. So when it comes down to it, I think that this is a product that a lot of people that may not look like me have been able to profit on, but there are a lot of people who look like me that are sitting in jail because of that product. So on one end of the country, it's a marijuana, cannabis in general is something to help people. But then on another part of the country, it's enough to put you in jail. That doesn't make sense. And I think we should be making more strides to be a little bit more progressive in that nature. And it really needs to be those kind of stats right there. Really, and this particular report also broke it down in terms of the counties, and that says a lot, because now, we got to look at our municipalities and see what's really happening here, and what kind of change are we going to bring for the good of South Carolina in general. But, these are, I live on the peninsula, I work and play on the peninsula. So when I look at these kinds of things, and now, like I said, I own a business that's right on the peninsula with a product that, I want everybody to have access to.
Now, you talk about being progressive. How do you hope to be progressive with working with current Charleston County Sheriff Tristan Graziano?
Oh, yeah. Well, one, I really like the things that she was saying. She does have, I think she made a comment about moving towards, or at least wanting to move towards decriminalization, legalization of marijuana. She also addressed a few other things like wanting to do an independent audit of the sheriff's department. I think that that's phenomenal. That's something that I feel when you're in that place where you are willing to go under that kind of, I guess you could say scrutiny, but at least having that magnifying glass on you. And I don't feel like the past sheriff, he made it clear he didn't want to do that. And when it comes to having the relationship with the sheriff, when we're working, educate and say, hey, like I actually work in this industry. I actually work with this material, or, we watch the industry, we watch the trends, we read the case studies. I think it's important for us to have that kind of conversation. And I just feel like our new sheriff will have more of a ear towards that, just wanting to at least hear that information. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
And what type of other conversations do you hope to have with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office?
Okay, so I hope to have some conversations about just how how they view the community, how they're in the community, how are they going to be even more involved, and what does involvement really look like? How are they going to broaden their horizons, their understandings of the people in the community? I just really think that relationships are important, and beyond just having a relationship, just really understanding the whys, like what are people's day to day, and why is their day to day like this, walk the streets every once in a while, and not even in uniform. Walk the streets, walk the neighborhoods, like really understand be a human being in these spaces, really open up your eyes. So, I just really hope that there is a community first thought. And I think that sometimes we automatically think that when it comes to law enforcement that, well, of course, protect and serve, like they're always thinking about the community, but I really, it's not a perfect system, so there needs to be a little bit more effort. And I'm hoping to see that from the sheriff's department.
And when they're walking around in these spaces, how should they view these situations in these spaces and these people?
I think with an open mind. I think that's pretty much the bottom line, with an open mind and also an open mind, an educated mind, really hearing people out, listening to people. Like I just think that goes a long way. Listening to people, that's listening to people and having an open mind. I think that is the key. And going back to cannabis, obviously you do a lot of digital marketing. Yeah. How do you digital market that, as well as the awareness of racial bias? Yeah. So I think that one, just by us doing what we're doing, by being a Black owned hemp company in the peninsula, I think there's one other, but just by us being is already effective enough, because it's one of those things that says, who is your spokesperson? Does your spokesperson, or do your spokespeople, or the people that make up this particular industry, do they all look the same? Because if they all look the same, then it's kind of hard to, of course, diversity is, yes, beyond what people just look like, but I'd have to say that that's kind of that's a good telltale sign. Like take a look to the left and the right. Look at your neighbor. Does your neighbor look like you? Because if they only look like you, then that means that there's only a certain type of perspective or voice that's being put into demand, that's being put out into the public. So for us, when we're marketing, we market from the culture of cannabis, and I really think that that's something that isn't really talked about. There's a lot of people in circles that when it comes to the low country in the cannabis industry, there's been a lot of people who have been let down because they just haven't seen the progress they'd like to see, but they also just don't see the culture. And there's some nuances to cannabis culture that I feel like are being missed in this particular state, in this particular setting. And sometimes it's hard to describe those nuances because they just are, and it's just one of those things that when you're around it, you pick up on it. So we want to provide that. We want to provide that cultural lens and put our own spin on things and be our authentic selves. That's how we're going to be able to push that. And what perspective is in demand right now, Vaughn? In terms of cannabis, in general? I think that the perspective is, one, destroying like the stigmas and things like that. I feel like in this area, the East Coast, but we're seeing some nice strides, especially with places like New Jersey legalizing. But when it comes to the low country, especially I would even say the South, this little corner right here, there's so much stigma. So I feel like as a whole, the industry itself wants to destroy that stigma, wants to eradicate it, wants to bring forth facts and studies that say, hey, cannabis is not just this thing that you just sit on your couch and then you're useless and you take it and then you're not going to be able to have any responsibilities. Like all of that is very old propaganda, and it really needs to be eradicated and dealt with. So that's the demand that I would say in terms of perspective, is actually having a true lens, a true light shown on the benefits and what it actually is and how it can actually help and be integrated into our society. What are those benefits? Okay, so that's a long answer, but what I would say is in terms of like hemp, because that's what's here in South Carolina, because there's not a psychoactive portion to that particular flower. A lot of people are it's an easy kind of introduction into cannabis in general, but different strains have different benefits. So you might have a strain that really helps with anti-inflammatory benefits. So there are people who use it for muscle pain. There are people who use it for their joints and things like that, and taking care of that kind of pain. You've got people who use it to taper that anxiety. It really helps with that, just kind of mellowing people out, kind of clarity in general, assisting with that. And all of that really depends on that cannabinoid profile, because there's more to cannabis than just THC and CBD. There's a lot of other cannabinoids that all make up the plant and all make up the experience. So that's another element. There's people who I know that have used products to assist them with nausea that they get from other medications, going to sleep. There are people who are able to completely rest their mind, once again, without a psychoactive effect. Without a psychoactive effect, this is not people being out of their minds. This is people being able to achieve a homeostasis, or what they feel in their body is this homeostasis, and be able to, create that relaxing mode for them to do whatever it is that they're trying to do or accomplish.
And I know also you said this too, obviously, about entrepreneurship. You said this quote: "These amazing creations have been formed through both I am on top of the world and what in the world moments in my life."
That's right.
What were those moments?
Oh man. There's been moments where I feel like I'm like, holy crap, I actually did this, or I accomplished this, or I can't believe I'm doing this. And you feel good. And then there's moments where you're like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Am I supposed to be doing this? It's that balance of confidence and doubt sometimes, and I think that's an element that people, in entrepreneurial work. Well, I think some of the people I follow, they talk about it, but it's just a reality. Like sometimes you feel like I'm the smartest person on the face of the earth, and not just because of knowledge, but just because you're like, oh, I'm going after my dreams. And then there's some days where you're like, what the heck is like, why did I choose this? Why did I do this? But I think that's a beautiful dance. That's harmony, I feel. And I think it's, once again, a very human thing to do. So I don't discourage myself from feeling that way, because I feel like it aids in my success.
And you also said this too, quote: "I've been thinking lately about often I have expectations on how elements of my business are supposed to go."
Right.
The textbook definition of those elements.
Well, sometimes you think that, like, say you want to get a business license, and say you want to open up a store, and you think, okay, well, I'm just going to do steps 1 through 5. But sometimes it's the steps actually go step 2, 4, 5, 3, then 1, and you kind of, it kind of can mess with you sometimes, because you're like, am I doing the right thing? Is this how it's supposed to be? And that causes a lot of stress. And sometimes what I've learned is that don't walk in with all these expectations. Yes, there's things that you need to do, right? There's things that you need to, let the county know, that you need to let the state know, that you need to get this permit. But right. You know what? I've worked with enough businesses to realize it will happen. Just go along with the flow, take your time, and don't be stressed out, because even deadlines can be extended. That was one of the biggest things that I learned as an entrepreneur, that you got a lot of deadlines on things, and a conversation can change a lot of things. A conversation with saying, hey, is there any way for me to have time? That's a lot of ways that people are getting the things that they want, just by asking a question, so that's what I mean by that right there.
And you also said this too, that feeling you get when a desire has been fulfilled. What desires have you been able to fulfill thus far?
Just ownership and taking risk, taking calculated risk, I feel. That has been satisfying for me, constantly growing and maturing in who I am as a professional. That is gratifying. My own personal relationships, whether it's by, being married, or, more stronger relationships with my own family members. That's gratifying to me. There are a lot of things that I think I spend a lot of time thinking. I spend a lot of time in my head, and I write down a lot of goals. And so when I get to check those things off, or I feel like I've made right progress, it's gratifying to me because my happiness is the most important thing to me. So yeah, there's been a lot of things I've been able to check off.
And you talk about gratification. You said this about obviously your business. You said this, here at Mr. B, we're coining the term green gratification.
That's
because
right.
we want every visitor to walk away with a deep satisfaction from their hemp CBD experience.
That's right.
What was your first hemp CBD experience?
Oh man, my first hemp CBD experience. So let me think accurately. I want to say it was a few years ago or a couple of years ago when I first tried CBD, and that CBD. So for me in the beginning, just like a lot of people, which is another reason why it kind of pushed me to be in the industry, was that you take it, but you don't really know what you don't really know what to expect. So there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this and it's supposed to cure all my stuff. That's not, that's not necessarily how that works. So my first experience, I want to say like a couple of years ago, if not, I think it was like a couple of years ago. And so I was like, well, I don't understand like what this may have helped me with. But then as I continued to progress with it, and I remember my husband having the idea of being like, he said, man, I think I want to get into this hemp business. Like I want to get into this hemp side of things. And I said, and that was at the end of last year. And I said, you know what, let's do it. Like, why not us? You just get to a point where you say, why not us? So we got even more into just kind of that hemp industry and how that all ties in and the benefits. And I will say that my experiences now are way more, they're less surface level than what it was when I first used it. And because of that stark difference, right, it was like, okay, I need to educate people so that they know what they're looking for. Because this is a product that actually could probably help you. But you may not know what you are looking for. It's an industry that's still not regulated. So you can have people saying that they're selling you 500 milligrams of CBD and there's not a lick of CBD in there. And that is why things should be tested. You should see lab reports, but all of this is information that the average consumer is not thinking about that. Think about it. We live in a capitalistic society. Everything is handed to us. People are not, it's not just as easy as that. So I'm here to educate the consumer that, hey, there's some other elements that you want to make sure is here. And so we try our best to provide those elements so that when people do have their first experience, it can be a gratifying one. It can be one that they understand instead of like, for me, my first experience being like, I feel like something else is supposed to be occurring here, but I'm just not sure. So.
Wow. What are people looking for right now in this particular business?
People are looking for relief. People are looking for affordable relief. And, I'm very adamant and very clear about things when I say I am not a doctor. Anybody who, well, I'm not gonna say anybody who is in the hemp game is not a doctor. That's not true. But I am not here to prescribe things to people. A lot of times we're approached with people who are looking for alternative ways. There are a lot of people who they aren't pleased with the prescription drugs they're on. They don't like the feelings that they're getting. They don't like the way it makes their body feel. There are some people who have had experience with traditional THC, and they're like, hey, I want to be able to utilize this plant, but I don't want the head high. I don't want a psychoactive feel. There are people that are looking for very specific relief to their ailments, whatever that may be, whether it's anxiety or, there was a case study where there were a group of people given CBD, I think like 200 milligrams or something of CBD before they did a big presentation. And it significantly reduced their anxiety for them to take the presentation. And so that's what people are kind of looking for. They're looking for, if you think about the world right now, and how much like anxiety disorders have skyrocketed in terms of people being diagnosed with anxiety-based disorders, it kind of makes sense that cannabis, marijuana is being legalized in places because people are looking for relief from those kinds of feelings. There's a lot happening in the world. And there are people who really want help with their anxiety, and they find that this is a path that they want to explore. So I'm here for that exploration.
And I know obviously you take what you do very seriously. In fact, you said this, we take what we do seriously. There are people who are searching for alternatives to their wellness. It's a privilege to provide products that help people. Let me ask you this. What type of alternatives are you searching now for when it comes to your wellness?
Yeah, well, definitely utilizing more CBD is just kind of what my lifestyle is right now, along with other things, because like eating right, drinking your water, creating boundaries, because mental health is important and really bases itself around those boundaries that you create. Teaching people how to treat you, knowing when you gotta fall back, knowing when to push forward. All of that is a part of my wellness. I've been very interested lately in terms of how CBD can specifically help women, especially during their cycles. And that's important to me because I have a lot of friends who have a really tough time during their cycle. And how these products have been able to help with that. That's a big deal. So those are kinds of things, incorporating that into my own wellness, because that's another thing that I tell people from our customers that come through, is that I use these products too. I'm not going to sell something that I'm not going to use or I'm not comfortable with using, because to me that just don't make sense. That's like when I see the people at McDonald's ordering my food from Chick-fil-A. Obviously something, something there. Just the perspective of it. You're just like, all right, maybe they know something I don't know. So that's what I'm doing with my wellness. A lot of different things, taking more walks, enjoying the outdoors when you can, especially during these times. Socializing is a little bit different, but that's okay. You just trying to adapt with those kinds of things. So I've got a lot going on for my wellness.
And you said this too, cannabis has many beneficial properties and has been used to help heal for ages. I'll tell it to our community and clients, we're here for you and we get it. All facts. What are those current beneficial properties?
So those beneficial properties kind of go back to what I was talking about in terms of just the physical benefits that people have been able to report when utilizing cannabis. And I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper in that because of the idea of dosage. So I feel like a lot of beneficial things come when you understand your dosage, because the industry is not in a place where there are some recommendations of dosage at times, but every person is different. It's still an organic material. So because it's an organic material, it takes a lot of you listening to your body and you listening to yourself, which is a skill that I think that we've strayed away from a lot. And I think it's very important, like knowing how you feel when you're on certain medications. I did that with something as simple as ibuprofen, where there are certain over-the-counter medications. I was like, I don't think this is agreeing with me that much, or it's not making me, like, I'm not accomplishing what I need this to accomplish. So those are the kind of things that I feel when it comes to benefits, knowing that dosage, when you're using the correct dosage, I feel like people are having better experiences when they fine tune that dosage so that they can reap those benefits. And we have some people, I've had some people before that may not be understanding of what hemp is. And like I said, they may be more acquainted with like kind of the traditional THC. So they're like, well, I didn't feel anything. I was like, well, it's not really, that's not what kind of game this particular plant plays. It is much more about your overall kind of body wellness, that endocannabinoid system and interacting with that. And so understanding that kind of feeling that you get when that system is in play, that's where I feel like the benefits lie.
And what experiences do you want to have next with your business and obviously being an entrepreneur?
I think the experiences that I'm looking forward to is, one, growing our retail business. And I'll speak specifically to Mr. B, growing our retail experience, and then also progressing forward in terms of eventually wanting to the laws are a little restrictive right now in South Carolina in terms of being a retail business and being able to grow hemp. But I'm just hoping that as the years go by, that there will be much more of a positive look on that and much more wiggle room for people to be able to create vertically integrated businesses for their cannabis business. But a lot of economies kind of intentionally block that. But that's what my next hope is that we're able to move fluidly within the economy of our state, to be able to have that vertical integration.
And what will be that economy for the cannabis business in the next 4 years?
That's a great question. And I don't have all the answers on that because I feel like I read a lot of things where, I'm interested in seeing how different states either tax marijuana or how they integrate it into their economy. Now, that's not to say that it's that I don't think it's going to be a good thing. It's projected to be this like $1 billion, if not $1 trillion industry. And CBD in itself, in terms of topicals, that particular segment of the industry almost tripled. It felt like overnight, but it's not the same like it was in like 2012, or even before that time. It's just something that is constantly on that uphill, so it's an industry that's constantly growing and has a lot of economic benefits in terms of how we can utilize that for our own communities. Just in terms of that tax system, integrating it as a taxable product. I mean, if Charleston can tax you on a hospitality tax, okay, and makes a good chunk of change from that, I think we can figure out how to utilize a recreational material for the benefit of our people as well. So, but I'm not the tax genius, so I can't answer that all the way.
But what is the current tax system when you think of cannabis and all of these other businesses?
Well, in terms of here in South Carolina, it's a little bit of a gray area because there's not really something that it's not always clear. I will say this: when you're starting like a hemp business,
right,
it is not the clearest thing about what to do and what not to do. It takes a lot of kind of like searching. So you're like, okay, well, how am I setting this up and what are my taxes like? And you just kind of try to stick to that basic system, but there's nothing that just flat out says, hey, you're selling cannabis. This is how you need to tax this. That's not really in existence in South Carolina. If I find it, I'll be sure to update the people. But as far as I've seen, I haven't been able to see something like that. But other places, it's a little bit more integrated. Like there's actual laws that say this is how we're going to tax this. And this is what this particular money is going to go towards. There are some places, I can't remember the exact state, but there are some states where the money from cannabis is directly going back into communities or directly being used for either, road systems or things of that nature. So the possibilities are really endless. And I think that we could really take a look at, I don't know, like something like maybe someone smarter than me can figure out how those taxes could help with affordable housing. Like why not? Is there something that can be integrated in that kind of avenue? So I just think there's a lot of possibilities, and I think we just need to sit down and think about them.
Vaughn Swain, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. You have a great day.
Likewise.